Rainbow Six Siege puts the soul of a tactical FPS in the skin of a piñata. It's a 5-on-5 asymmetrical shooter defined by short, intense rounds and by its level destruction, which is probably the highest fidelity system of its kind since Red Faction Guerrilla. Siege made a terrific first impression when Ubisoft revealed it at E3 last June, but it also left me with a ton of questions. I got a second, longer chance to play Siege during a trip to Montreal earlier this month, during which Ubisoft released a few more details. The footage here is from my perspective, distilled down from the 2.5 hours I played during that visit. So there's still a ton of unknowns about Siege. Ubisoft has only shown 2 maps, the newest being the plane level you're looking at here, and we know absolutely nothing about Siege's campaign. It's a bit concerning for a 2015 game. Even so, I have a huge crush on Siege's values as a competitive FPS. It's much more of a game about physical awareness, timing, counters, and information than marksmanship, necessarily. You've got 1 life, 3 minutes to live it, and that format makes mundane decisions meaningful. Which doorway I enter through or exactly when I choose to reload aren't trivial decisions. And as a Counter-Strike player and a SWAT 4 player, I'm a big fan of that. Siege's setup phase is a big piece of what distinguishes it from stuff like Battlefield or Call of Duty. For the first 40 seconds of every round, the defenders basically play home alone. They put up barricades, barbed wire, and other obstacles pretty much wherever they think has the most tactical value. While they're busy fortifying, the attackers are piloting these 2-wheeled ground drones to find the hostage and analyze their defenses. In RTS terms, one side is building a base while the other is scouting. When I first played Siege at E3, it felt like this phase might spoil some of the surprise and uncertainty of where the defender's weak spot was. It felt a little unfair to be able to see so much, but I've grown to like it a little more. It's an interesting kind of micro-clash between both teams that sets the stage for the combat that follows. The defenders have to pick between building stuff and destroying drones. There isn't really enough time to do both of those things perfectly, but I do wonder if giving an attacker an extra drone that they can use mid-match is a bit too much. One of the big questions I saw from people after E3 was, are those maps really as destructible as the trailer showed? I mean, what Ubisoft showed at E3 was certainly choreographed, but the short answer is yes. There are indestructible surfaces, and ones that don't make a clean, passable hole every time you break through them, but in general it's a genuinely dynamic system. When something blows up, it's disorienting, it's splashy. When you blast drywall at close range with a shotgun, it makes a clean hole that you can look and aim through. And I really like the experience of fighting while not being able to perfectly see my enemy on the other side of a wall. It's this really fun guessing game of trading shots as the wall is kind of crumbling around you and you can see more and more of your opponent while trying to do more damage. It's pretty unique. I do wish that Siege didn't use damage indicators to let me know every single time my shot connects with it. I'd much rather have it be a mystery and have to cope with that. At the very least, I hope there's some sort of hardcore mode if Ubisoft doesn't change this. More generally, I like the way that the 2 maps, despite being pretty narrow, make room for different and interesting tactics on both sides. As an attacker, I can move carefully and meticulously, room by room, or I could fight loudly, blowing up and shooting every useful wall and ceiling to scare the defenders out of position. And on defense, we could lay a really dense, concentrated set of defenses. We also had to consider that turtling in this way meant that we were walling ourselves in, preventing us from moving into neighboring rooms and adapting on the fly. Mainly, I really liked that I didn't have to camp the hostage to be successful. I and other players had good rounds just lurking around the map on defense, being in an unexpected place at an unexpected time. And it was really fun to play against attackers' expectations of where they saw you in the scouting phase and move away a few seconds later. The last thing I want to talk about is Siege's operator system. Siege will have 20 characters, 10 for each side, and you can pick one and configure their gear before each round. They generally have access to the same set of weapons, SMGs, shotguns, assault rifles, pistols, but each has a piece of special, individualized gear. The operator named Mute has jamming devices that block remotely detonated devices from triggering, like C4. Rook deploys a bag of armor for his teammates to pick up and add to their defenses. Sledge smashes through barricades with a giant hammer. Or you can play as a recruit who lacks a special ability but picks from a wider range of basic gear. They were the only operators who could use the ballistic shield, for instance. Which operators your team picks changes the texture of your tactics, but not so much so that I call Siege a class-based game. That's really, really good. For the most part, the focus is still squarely on pure breach and clear maneuvers and decision-making, not on item gimmicks. There was one exception, though. Pulse, a defender who carries an X-ray gadget called a heartbeat monitor that can spot enemies' heartbeats through walls at about a 20-meter range. I'm the last person to accuse something of it being overpowered at the drop of a hat, but in this instance I'm more concerned about the way that Pulse's ability eliminated the need for using your eyes and ears to sense enemies. There are a few ways to counter the device. Thatcher's EMP grenade, and you're obviously vulnerable while using it, but I really think this item needs either a harsh cooldown or a bigger rethink by Ubisoft. Beyond that complaint though, Siege is looking really good. Its destruction system represents one of the few meaningful tech innovations we've seen in FPS in the past few years, a feature that fundamentally changes the style of firefights. Generally, I walked away from Siege with a bunch of short, intense tactical vignettes. It's a game where strategy and cleverness can overcome Twitch skills, and I think that gives Siege the potential to delight hardcore FPS players like me, while still being welcoming to players who don't play stuff like Counter-Strike because it's too reflexes heavy. For now, it's good news that Siege will have a closed alpha to gather feedback and smash bugs, something I'll be jumping into soon to keep developing my impressions.